Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at guest posting outreach strategies.
Okay.
You shared a guide that's basically a playbook from an SEO pro.
Yeah.
And I got to say, it's surprisingly candid about how to actually get results.
Right.
This isn't some surface-level advice.
No.
We're talking about building a virtual outreach team.
Mm-hmm.
A strategy the author claims is worth $200,000.
Wow.
Even a tactic called link hijacking.
Yeah, it's definitely a refreshing take.
Yeah.
And one that cuts through a lot of the fluff we often see in these types of guides.
Yeah.
You know, the author is very upfront about the fact that Google's war on SEO is partly driven by their desire to steer people towards paid advertising.
Right.
And they believe there's more wiggle room for smart link building
Yeah.
Google lets on.
But it's not about just spamming the internet with low-quality links, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
The guide really stresses the importance of quality
and
finding opportunities on blogs with genuine audiences. It's not just about chasing high domain authority or page rank.
Yeah.
Those can be misleading.
I see.
What you really want are signs of real engagement.
Okay, so how do we spot those signs? What should we be looking for?
Think about it this way.
Okay.
A healthy blog is like a bustling cafe.
Okay.
You got people coming and going, conversations happening, maybe even some friendly debates.
I like it.
That's what you want to see in the comments section.
Okay.
And on social media.
Right.
Look for genuine interaction, varied opinions, not just a bunch of generic praise or suspiciously uniform engagement numbers.
So like if every post has the exact same number of comments all saying, great post,
exactly.
That's a red flag.
Because those little inconsistencies that often reveal the true story.
Interesting.
Now, finding these quality blogs
Right.
is where the guide really shines.
Okay.
The author has a specific method they call the $200,000 outreach strategy.
Okay.
And it relies heavily on a tool called Scrapebox.
Scrapebox. That sounds pretty intense.
It does have a bit of a learning curve,
Yeah.
but it's an incredibly powerful tool once you get the hang of it.
Okay.
Think of it like a metal detector, but instead of gold, you're searching for those hidden gem blogs that are open to guest pasting.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Walk me through how this scraping actually works.
It all starts with crafting very specific search queries, or what the author calls footprints.
Okay.
Instead of just searching for guest posts, which will give you a ton of irrelevant results,
Yeah.
you use more targeted phrases like write for us or become a contributor.
So we're being very deliberate about the sites we're targeting, focusing on those that are actively looking for guest contribution.
Exactly. But it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
You also layer in keywords that are specific to your niche.
Okay.
Moving beyond broad terms and honing in on those long-tail keywords that really define your target audience.
So instead of just money, I might search for investing in index funds.
Precise.
Or something like that.
The more specific you can be,
Yeah.
the better your chances of finding blogs with a truly relevant audience.
I see.
And then on top of that, you add in what the author calls quality indicator footprints.
Like those comment counts we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can tell Scrapebox to prioritize blogs that have a certain number of comments per post, indicating an active and engaged audience.
Wow. It's like a multi-layered filter, ensuring that you're only left with the best of the best. But we're talking about potentially scraping thousands of sites here.
Right.
Surely there's some cleanup involved after this initial scrape.
Oh, absolutely. This is where things can get a little tedious.
Yeah.
But it's a crucial step. You need to weed out the duplicates, the irrelevant sites like government or educational domains, and those that just don't meet your quality standards.
What kind of quality standards are we talking about?
The author recommends looking at metrics like page rank and domain authority, but with a twist. They actually suggest filtering out sites with very high page rank, those above PR6.
Isn't higher page rank usually a good thing? Why would we exclude those?
The thinking is that those super high authority sites are probably inundated with requests and might not be as receptive to guest posts from someone they don't already know.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Blogs that are established enough to have a good audience, but still hungry for quality content.
Makes sense. And I imagine social signals are also a key indicator of quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can use Scrapebox add-ons to check for things like Facebook likes, Twitter followers, and Pinterest shares. Again, it's about looking for signs of a real audience, not just a ghost town.
Okay, so we've used Scrapebox to build this massive list of potential guest posting opportunities.
Right.
We've refined it based on quality indicators.
Yeah.
And we're left with, what, hundreds of blogs? Thousands?
It could be a very substantial list, depending on your niche and how broad your initial scrape was.
Right.
And that brings us to the next challenge.
Okay.
Outreach. How do you actually approach all of these blogs without it becoming a full-time job?
Well, that's what I'm dying to know, especially since not everyone has the budget to hire a team of outreach specialists.
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The author has a surprisingly affordable solution, building a virtual assistant VA team.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about this VA strategy.
The author actually recommends focusing on hiring female VAs.
Interesting.
From the Philippines.
Okay.
Through platforms like Upwork.
Interesting. Why the Philippines specifically?
They argue that VAs from the Philippines tend to have excellent English skills, are incredibly reliable, and all for a fraction of the cost of hiring someone locally. We're talking $244 an hour.
That's significantly less expensive than hiring someone in the US or Europe. But how do you ensure quality and avoid getting scammed or ending up with subpar work?
The guide emphasizes the importance of hiring fast and firing faster.
I like that approach. It's about being efficient with your time and resources.
Exactly. The author also recommends using tools like Thunderbird to manage multiple email accounts and streamline the outreach process.
So you're not just blasting out emails from your main Gmail account. You're setting up dedicated email addresses for each VA to avoid spam filters and keep things organized smart.
And speaking of email, the guide has some strong opinions about what makes an effective outreach message.
Okay, let's talk about those emails. What are some of the common outreach myths that the author debunks?
One of the biggest ones is that you need to spend a lot of time flattering the blogger.
Right.
Or crafting these lengthy introductions.
Yeah.
They argue that most bloggers are busy people and appreciate getting straight to the point.
So no need for flowery language or gushing praise. Just cut to the chase.
Exactly. The guide even provides a surprisingly simple and direct email template.
I'm all ears. What does this magic template look like?
It's shorter than you might think.
Okay.
The subject line is simply advertising on blog name.
Okay.
And the body of the email is something along the lines of, we're interested in advertising on blogs like yours. Are you able to let me know the different advertising options you offer?
Okay.
We're specifically interested in guest posts.
Wow, that's incredibly straightforward. No beating around the bush, just a clear statement of intent.
And it works.
Yeah.
The author claims this direct approach gets a much higher response rate than trying to be overly clever or flattering.
I can see how that would be refreshing for a blogger who's constantly bombarded with poorly written or irrelevant pitches. It's like a breath of fresh air. But I have to ask, how do you protect your client's identity in those initial stages? You don't want to reveal their name only to find out that the blog is a terrible fit.
That's a great point, and the guide does address it.
Okay.
The author suggests being deliberately vague about your client's identity until you've confirmed that the blog is a good match. You can mention the industry, but avoid mentioning the specific website or brand name.
So it's about building trust and ensuring that you're both on the same page. Before revealing too much information, I like it.
It's all about protecting your client.
Yeah.
And ensuring that their brand is associated with high-quality content and reputable blogs.
Speaking of content, even the best outreach strategy won't work if the articles you're pitching are terrible.
Right.
What does the guide say about content creation?
The author has very strong opinions about content quality. In fact, they openly express disdain for sites like zine articles, which are often filled with low-quality generic content.
Yeah, those articles tend to be more about keyword stuffing than providing real value to the reader. Not exactly the kind of content that's going to get you featured on a top-tier blog.
Exactly. The guide emphasizes the importance of originality and creating content that is engaging, informative, and genuinely helpful to the reader. It's not just about getting a link. It's about providing value and building your reputation as a thought leader in your niche.
Easier said than done right. Coming up with fresh, compelling content ideas can be a real challenge. Does the guide offer any guidance on that front?
It does.
Okay.
The author provides a whole slew of techniques for finding proven article topics.
Okay.
One approach is to analyze top pages using tools like Open Site Explorer. You essentially look at the pages that are getting the most backlinks and social shares, and then brainstorm ways to create your own spin on those popular topics.
Ah, so you're leveraging the wisdom of the crowd, finding out what's already resonating with people?
Exactly.
And then putting your own unique twist on it. Clever.
Exactly. The guide also recommends using tools like Topsy to find trending content, mining FAQs for common questions, and even looking at popular infographics for inspiration.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah.
It's all about tapping into those existing sources of information.
Yeah.
And finding creative ways to repackage or expand upon them. What about crafting attention-grabbing titles? Does the guide offer any advice on that front?
Absolutely. The author stresses the importance of crafting titles that are unique, specific,
Okay.
and evoke a reaction from the reader.
So no more generic keyword stuff titles. We need something that piques the reader's curiosity and makes them want to click through.
Exactly. They suggest incorporating pop culture references, asking provocative questions, and offering actionable takeaways in the title itself.
Those are great tips. It's about thinking beyond just keywords and crafting titles that are truly compelling and stand out from the crowd.
And remember, even with the best title,
Yeah.
the content itself has to deliver on that promise.
Right. You can't just trick people into clicking with a catchy title. The article itself has to be engaging, informative, and well-written. Speaking of writing, not everyone is a gifted wordsmith.
Right.
What does the guide say about finding and managing writers?
The author recommends using platforms like Upwork and Guru to find talented writers, but they emphasize that you get what you pay for.
So no cutting corners on content creation. If you want high-quality articles, you need to be willing to invest in talented writers.
Exactly. The guide also highlights the importance of building relationships with your writers, paying them well, and providing clear instructions and feedback.
That makes sense if you find a writer who consistently delivers great work. You want to keep them happy and engaged.
Absolutely. The author also suggests providing your writers with a detailed training document that outlines your expectations, style guidelines, and any specific requirements for the content.
That's a great idea. It sets everyone up for success and ensures that the content is consistent with your brand and messaging. We've covered a lot of ground here, from scraping for blogs to crafting outreach emails and even managing writers, what happens after the guest post is live. Does the guide offer any tips for maximizing its impact?
It does. And this is where we get into some really interesting tactics for amplifying your content and squeezing every last drop of value from your guest posting efforts.
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. I'm eager to learn more about these amplification strategies. All right, so we've got our content strategy locked and loaded. We're ready to write amazing guest posts, or at least find talented writers who can, but let's back up for a second before we start pitching those articles. There's one more tactic from the guide I want to unpack. It's called link hijacking.
Right.
And it sounds kind of sneaky in a good way.
It's definitely one of the more creative approaches, and it's all about leveraging your competitors' hard work to find those hidden gem blogs that are open to guest posting, but might not be obvious at first glance.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. How does this link hijacking thing actually work?
It's a bit like being a detective. You start by identifying a blog in your industry that clearly accepts guest posts. Maybe they have a dedicated guest posts section, or use a specific byline format like guest post by author name.
So we're looking for blogs that aren't shy about featuring guest content.
Got it.
Then what?
Then you use Scrapebox to collect all of the guest posts from that blog. You essentially create a search query that isolates those guest posts based on the footprint you've identified.
So if the footprint is guest post by, you'd search for something like site:/exampleblog.com guest post by in Scrapebox.
You got it. That'll give you a list of all the guest posts published on that blog. Now comes the interesting part. You dig into those posts and see who wrote them. Those are your competitors, or at least people who are already successfully placing content on blogs in your niche.
So we're not just admiring their work. We're going to use this information to our advantage. What's next?
You take each competitor's website URL and plug it into a link analysis tool. Like RF's Majestic or Moz. These tools allow you to see all the backlinks pointing to a particular website.
So we're essentially seeing where else our competitors have been guest posting. I like where this is going.
Exactly. You export that list of backlinks.
Right.
Which could be huge.
Yeah.
And bring it back into Scrapebox. Now you have a massive pool of potential guest posting opportunities. But it's likely a mixed bag at this point.
So how do we separate the wheat from the chaff?
Huh?
How do we zero in on the blogs that are actually relevant for guest posting?
This is where the Scrapebox page scanner add-on comes in handy.
Okay.
You can use this add-on to look for specific phrases within the HTML code of each backlink.
Right.
Phrases like guest post, sponsored post, or write for us are good indicators that the backlink is actually a guest post.
It's like a second layer of filtering, ensuring that we're only focusing on those backlinks that are likely guest contributions.
I like it. And what's great about this approach is that you're not just finding any random blogs.
Right.
You're finding blogs that have already proven themselves to be open to contributions from people in your industry.
Yeah, it's like a shortcut to finding high-quality opportunities.
Exactly.
This is brilliant. I could see how this strategy could save so much time compared to just blindly scraping for guest posting blogs. But let's be realistic, even with a super refined list, emailing hundreds of blogs can be incredibly time-consuming.
Right.
The guide recommends building a VA team for outreach. But what if you don't even have time to manage a team?
That's a valid point. Building and managing a team does take effort, even if it's virtual.
Yeah.
The author actually suggests an alternative approach.
Okay.
For those who are super time constrained.
Okay.
They call it the broad specific method.
Okay.
And it's all about finding those highly targeted opportunities quickly, even if it means sacrificing some comprehensiveness.
Okay, I'm all about efficiency. How does this approach work?
It's a bit of a hybrid.
Okay.
You still use Scrapebox,
Right.
but instead of starting with a broad scrape, you use a combination of broad keywords
Okay.
and those super specific search modifiers we talked about earlier.
So instead of searching for a long tail keyword like investing in index funds, I might just use the broader term finance.
Exactly. But to make sure you're not drowning in irrelevant results, you use those search modifiers to target blogs that have those broad keywords in their URL or page title.
Okay.
For example, your search string might look something like finance. Write for us, one comment.
Ah, I see. So you're still casting a wide net, but those modifiers act like a sieve, ensuring that you only catch the most relevant and engaging blogs.
And you still apply your quality filters, domain authority, social signals, all of that.
Yeah.
It's about finding a balance between speed and precision.
Okay, let's say we've got our list of target blogs. We've crafted our super direct outreach email, and we've got a team of virtual assistants ready to hit send. What kind of response rate can we realistically expect?
That's a tough question to answer because it depends on so many factors.
Sure.
Your niche, the quality of your outreach, even the time of year. But the author suggests that with a well-executed campaign, you can expect a response rate of anywhere from 5% to 20%.
That's a pretty wide range. What are some of the things that can impact that response rate?
One of the biggest factors is personalization.
Okay.
While the guide advocates for a straightforward approach, they also stress the importance of personalizing your emails whenever possible.
So no more generic "Dear blogger name greetings." We need to show that we've actually taken the time to get to know their blog.
Exactly. Even something as simple as mentioning a recent post you enjoyed.
Right.
Or referencing a shared interest can go a long way.
Yeah.
It shows that you're not just blasting out generic emails, you're actually interested in building a relationship.
Makes sense. But how do you personalize hundreds of emails without spending hours researching each blog?
That's where your VA team comes in handy.
Okay.
You can give them clear instructions on how to quickly find relevant information about each blog. Maybe it's checking their About page, skimming their recent posts, or taking a peek at their social media profiles.
So it's about giving your VAs the tools and guidelines they need to personalize those emails efficiently smart. But even with a high response rate, not every blogger is going to say yes to your pitch, right?
Of course not. Rejection is part of the game, and the guide encourages you to embrace it. Not every blog is going to be a good fit, and sometimes you'll get turned down even if you've done everything right.
So how do you handle those rejections gracefully? And what about those bloggers who just ghost you completely?
We'll dive into those tricky situations and discuss the art of the follow-up in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about finding the right blogs, crafting compelling outreach emails, even building a virtual team to handle the heavy lifting. But what happens when all that effort pays off and you actually land a guest post? Is that where the work ends?
Not even close. In fact, the author of this guide argues that getting the guest post published is just the first step. They have a whole section dedicated to what they call going the extra mile, essentially maximizing the impact of your guest post once it's live.
Okay, I love that idea of squeezing every last drop of value from our efforts. What kind of strategies are we talking about here?
It's a multi-pronged approach, and it starts with something you might not expect. Facebook-sponsored content.
Wait, Facebook ads? I thought we were trying to get organic traffic, not pay for it.
You're right. Organic reach is the goal.
Yeah.
But even a small budget for sponsored content can make a big difference.
Okay.
Especially if you're strategic about your targeting.
So it's about using those powerful Facebook targeting tools to get your content in front of the exact audience who'd be interested in it.
Precisely. You can target people based on their interests, demographics, even their online behavior.
Right.
And the beauty of it is you don't have to spend a fortune.
Yeah.
The guide suggests starting with a small budget. Even just $5 a day and seeing what kind of results you get.
That's a lot less intimidating than I thought.
Yeah.
It's like a little boost to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
What other tactics does the author recommend?
Believe it or not, something as simple as blog commenting can still be incredibly effective.
Okay.
Now, we're not talking about spamming other blogs with irrelevant links.
Right.
This is about genuine engagement, adding thoughtful insights to conversations on other high-traffic blogs in your niche.
So reading articles, contributing to the discussion, and then naturally weaving in a link back to your guest post.
Exactly.
As a relevant resource.
It's a way to drive highly targeted traffic back to your content.
Okay.
And position yourself as a thought leader in your space.
Right.
And speaking of staying on top of conversations, the guide also recommends using a tool called Buzz Bundle.
Okay, haven't heard of that one. What is Buzz Bundle all about?
It's basically a social media management tool that allows you to track mentions of your keywords across various platforms, blogs, forums, Q&A sites, social media, you name it. You can then jump into those conversations. Right.
And subtly promote your guest post as a valuable resource.
So it's like being in the right place at the right time, ready to offer helpful information.
Exactly.
And in the process, steer people back to your content pretty sneaky.
It's all about being strategic and adding value wherever you go.
Yeah.
The guide also touches on a more controversial tactic called secondary link building.
Ooh, that sounds a bit like venturing into the dark side of SEO. What's secondary link building all about?
Essentially, it's the practice of building links to your guest posts from other websites.
Okay.
With the goal of increasing their authority and boosting your rankings even further. Some SEOs use paid link services or software to accomplish this, but it's definitely a gray area.
Yeah, I can see how that could easily backfire if you're not careful. You don't want to end up with a bunch of low-quality links.
Right.
That could actually hurt your rankings in the long run.
Exactly. It's a tactic that should be approached with caution.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wouldn't recommend it for beginners. The risks often outweigh the rewards. Okay, good to know. I think we've pretty much covered the entire playbook here, from scraping for blogs to crafting outreach emails, managing writers, and even amplifying our content. We've gone deep on every aspect of guest posting outreach. What are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
For me, it's the emphasis on quality over quantity. This guide makes it clear that in today's SEO landscape, you can't just rely on cheap tricks or shortcuts. You need to invest in building relationships with high-quality blogs, creating truly valuable content, and promoting your work strategically.
Absolutely. And I love how this guide demystifies some of the more technical aspects of outreach.
Yeah.
Like using Scrapebox and those powerful add-ons. It's like having a secret weapon that most people aren't even aware of.
It's definitely a valuable resource for anyone serious about taking their guest posting game to the next level.
Well, I think it's safe to say that our listener has a lot to think about and even more to put into action. Any final words of wisdom for them before we wrap up this deep dive?
I would just encourage them to experiment, to try out these techniques and see what works best for their niche. Guest posting is a constantly evolving game.
Right.
So it's important to be adaptable and always learning.
Perfect advice. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We'd love to hear about your experiences, your challenges, your successes. Share them with us. And let's keep learning from each other until next time. Happy guest posting.